about if the writer in you is set to burst wide open? We have one person who could serve as inspiration for you. Her name is Ryshia Kennie. She's an author from Regina, and she spent a career as a government worker, but she has emerged as a popular writer. And we're going to learn more about her work right now. Ryshia, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Costa.
It's really good to see you again.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, you've produced a lot of works. We're going to talk about your experience with Harlequin in just a moment. But your latest book is this one here, The Tears We Never Cried. Tell me a little bit about that.
That book was kind of the book of my heart, really. It was, my father had gone through, I guess, to get on my own side of things. It's actually a fictional book. It was never meant to be like a story of my life. But my father had Alzheimer's for probably 30 years, and my mother took care of him. And I can remember in those days thinking, what would it be like if she wasn't there, if one of us kids had to take care of Dad? And one day he disappeared. He disappeared for that. We spent hours looking for him. We had police, we had ambulance, the whole bit. We finally found him. It was a rainy, dark, stormy night. And I wrote this into the book. I wrote this whole scene into the book. I thought it had to be a scene. We finally find him. We pull up to this house. This woman had been good enough to take him in. She at first wasn't going to take this man that was knocking on the door. And she looks and goes, there's something wrong. So she let him in. And finally, Dad did manage to tell her his last name. And so she went through all the names and in the phone book and finally got Mom. So anyway, I get there and there is a slew of, there is medics, there is police, they're lined up in the kitchen. I'm going, oh my God, they put Dad in jail. What's happened here? But anyway, it was all extremely traumatic and we got him home safely. And from all of his years of dealing with him, this story was born. Completely different because it's a woman, for one, who has it, and it's her adult daughter. But it's a year in their life and she kind of sees Mom through from beginning to end. And in the middle finds herself, which she's lost and not realized.
We see how dementia and people who've had dementia, Alzheimer's, have touched so many lives.
Yeah.
What kind of reaction did you receive from people when you presented this story?
I had reactions I didn't expect. Like one reviewer said that her friends and stuff said, don't read it. And she says, no, I read it and I cried. And I stopped and I cried again. And I thought, I didn't expect people to be that emotional over it. I don't know why I didn't expect that, but I just didn't. And yeah, everybody had, they all shared the same experience, and almost to a person almost, they all kind of said the same thing, that I had obviously experienced it because I got it right. I
want to talk a little bit more about your writing career. I know that you went to the University of Regina, you got a degree and ended up as a government worker for a number of years. But all through those years working in those little cubicles in the government offices, there's this writer inside you that's coming out. Tell me a little bit about what got you thinking about writing.
I don't think I ever didn't think about writing. Well, actually, I shouldn't say never. From the age of about 9, when I started writing my first diary, I always wanted to be a writer because I was always a bookworm. Like, I just loved reading books. And I always wanted to write. And, at one time, I'd want to start my own newsletter. My first job, I was contributing to the staff newspaper, that kind of thing, just writing poetry, writing children's books. Never really figuring out what genre I wanted to write, but one has to make money. So, got my government job and worked my way through and continued with the writing gig all the way through that. But it took me until I was in my 30s to actually figure out that I wanted to write something that had a bit of romance in it. And that was back in the day when I was reading Stephen King and any other Robin Cook and any kind of horror I get my hands on. So I go to the library and I bring these books. I'd be embarrassed about the clinch covers. So I would put them upside down and put something on top of them and walk out with them. Yeah. But I read them all and I'm going, okay, this is what I want to write. Sure.
Well, listen, I mean, you got into a stable of writers who were under the Harlequin banner, right? Eventually.
Yeah.
Speaking of romance, now everyone remembers the Harlequin romance novels, it's certainly well known. This is called Harlequin Intrigue, which is part of the Harlequin family. So tell me, how did you end up working with them?
Harlequin Intrigue, that was actually my agent. I'd never ever had a push to write for Harlequin Intrigue, but I was writing romantic suspense. But I was writing romantic suspense that was set in foreign and exotic kind of locations, whereas Harlequin Intrigue normally wasn't that. It was more kind of at home. So he was kind of going, well, hey, why don't you scale it down a bit? You know, take out like, you know, the Borneo jungle and like tone it down a bit so it's going to actually fit into what they're. And so I did. Mm-hmm. And so he got me into there, and even then I know I heard a few noises about people saying, well, hey, I thought we weren't allowed international settings. Well, I didn't know. I just went right in. And that's what you
do. You take these romance stories. This is international intrigue. Suspect Witness is one of the books here that Ryshia Kennie has so eloquently written, and it's a beautiful book. Tell me a little bit about what got you so interested in taking these stories, these adventure romance stories, to far-flung lands.
It's just that your imagination is, I don't know, as soon as, like, my first book that I wrote like that was the Borneo jungle. Right. And I remember slogging through the Borneo jungle. Okay, here's a bunch of, people from Saskatchewan. We have absolutely no clue about jungles. And, like, I mean, there's apparently like snakes that will fall from trees there, and watch out for any kind of brightly colored snake, of which we did see. And he could actually move faster than us. And, and so you're in the midst of this. And, we go to the longhouse, and of course, the Aboriginals there, they were really, really big on storytelling. And some of the stories they told, well, I mean, your imagination is just going like crazy. Mm-hmm. And so you just start writing because this is just so out of your norm. And, I can remember standing in a beach and seeing it was a German guy who was standing behind me, and he's trying to catch my attention. And he couldn't speak a word of English, not even a, hey, you. Mm-hmm. But I can hear this man hollering at me, and I turn around, he's pointing, and there's this big thing coming out of the water, and it's a monitor. And I'm looking at this and going, we both were backing up, and it just kind of lumbers up the beach. Yeah.
But Ryshia, people have experienced travel adventures. Yeah. But how do you take that travel adventure that you experienced and turn it into a romance of international intrigue and into a book for Harlequin? How do you do that?
I'm not 100% sure myself, actually. No, I look and I think of this what if, like what if there was a guy here and a really, a really cute girl? What if they got into trouble here? What if she was running from something? What if he had to come and, try and muck his way through this extremely foreign experience to him, and, mm-hmm. They both have to make their way out of here. And it would just be like little incidences that I would think, like with that book, it was...
Suspect Witness.
Yeah, Suspect mm-hmm. Witness. It was going through Malaysia, going through the bat caves. And I can remember this Russian couple who actually swam through these bat caves. And I'm looking at them and going, oh, somebody ran here and they're trying to hide. And so you just start with that, and then you just go. And then the scenes of what you saw while you were traveling mm-hmm. become the scenes that your character kind of goes through.
What was it like writing for Harlequin Intrigue? There are a lot of Harlequin fans out there.
Yeah.
And you're one of the people actually, wrote for these folks. What was that like?
It was challenging. It was fun. It was a learning experience for sure. Yeah. I mean, they have expectations of this is what they want. And, you don't write about politicians, don't write about reporters. And so all these things I didn't know. Mm-hmm. In fact, one of my submissions that I put into them had a reporter, and it came right back, no reporters.
Really? I wonder why that would be the case. I'm kind of hurt now suddenly as a journalist type. They don't want the reporters in there. What was the explanation for that?
I didn't really ask. I was so busy trying to get...
You just want to impress the editors and get this out. I understand.
I kind of thought maybe it might be too controversial. I don't know. Or maybe it was something when they polled their readers they didn't find a big connect with.
Reporters are pretty boring anyway, don't you think?
No, well,
just kidding.
No, I actually wrote one.
Yeah, I know. Well, whatever the case, what conversations or what connection did you have to other Harlequin writers? Because you were the part of that family for a while. Did you have connections with other writers of Harlequin?
Not really, not a whole lot. I would know them by name and whatever. Okay. But because they were all kind of far flung. Mm-hmm. At one point when I went to the conference, I did meet a few of them.
What conference?
When they have the RWA, the Romance Writers of America, have a conference every year. Mm-hmm. And then Harlequin shows up for that, like all the big publishers do. Mm-hmm. And so I met a few of them there. I talked to a few of them on some of the chat things, but not anything where there's a real big connection at all.
Now, you told me about this Harlequin party that happened. It was some kind of an anniversary party in New York City. What was that experience like for you?
That was their 70th anniversary. And so they pulled out all the stops for this. It was like being in another world. It
Really?
was just, it was Times Square, and you're coming out of the Marriott Hotel over toward the Edison Hotel, which is this big old hotel. And you walked, it almost felt like a back door. There's bodyguards there checking out to make sure you should even be going into the place. I met up with a few authors at the other hotel, and so we all walked over as a group. And again, there were people that I knew they were other authors, but I never really got name basis chatting away too much with them. We kind of all go in, and it's red carpet right away, pretty much. Yeah. They give you we had purple dance socks, and they had the 70th anniversary on them. And we would literally take your shoes off, put these dance socks on. You're going to be dancing all night sort of thing. Hand us a glass of champagne.
Wow.
There's bodyguards walking through. Like you see these, because it's mostly women. Still Harlequin is, unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of men. And a lot of the men walking around where you could tell they were the bodyguard types. Something, wow, who's here that they have to protect?
Really? Well, romance writers. I mean, who would have thought? So this was such a big bash, and what was the ballroom like for this anniversary?
Well, they had curtains all in the back and the lights kind of shining up and down, and they would stop every once in a while for a great big group picture. Well, there's I don't know if there was 200 people there, 300 people. Yeah. It was just there was enough people there that when we all got into this dance floor, it was full of people. I was wearing I had my 1930s costume on because it was 70s, right? So 70 years. So I had my little hat on, so I could pick myself out from all these people just by the stupid hat because nobody else wore a hat.
Well, that's imagination, which you have as a writer. Wow, what an experience with Harlequin. Well, that's sort of in your past now. You've moved on to other writing projects. So before I get to that, because I'm sure people are wondering, well, what can I do to become the writer I want to be? What's the advice you have?
The advice I'd give was, first of all, and I think this is my biggest problem, was I never found my genre or where my home or where I needed to really kind of concentrate. And you need to find that first. You need to find what you love, what you want to write. And then find somebody who's doing it, somebody who can actually talk to that knows that. If I'd had somebody like me, I guess, to talk to, I might have had a better idea of what I should do. And a lot of it is too, I would sit down to write a book and just kind of try and write, and then I get lost about halfway in, and that'd be it, done. But you need to write something like a synopsis, know what's actually going to happen. And even if you take that synopsis and shred it by the middle, at least you've gotten to the middle.
Yeah, that's an important thing. And hours of time that it must take, painstaking time to come up with good stuff, I would think, Yeah, the ideas are easy. The writing of the idea is not so easy. Or the getting through the slush of what's going to happen in the middle. But for anybody out there, I'd say, they really need a community. Like if they can hook up with the Writers Guild or the romance writers or whoever, and then that's all there. Like the Romance Writers of America is one thing that I don't think it was around when I first started. Yeah, find people you can talk to and communicate with. So what's down the road for you?
Well, right now I'm looking at going kind of back to, I always liked to write kick-ass heroines. And I had to make my kick-ass heroines a little bit back so the hero could get in there. And I don't really like the hero getting in there too much. Well, I mean, he's there and there's a love story and there's all that. So right now I'm writing a series of their women, they were Marines, and there's 6 of them. And they've come out of, I've actually made up a country in this case. I wanted to start out in a country, but it was just getting too much politics. And I thought, no, I'm not even political, so forget it. We'll just make it up. So they're going in Anatar.
Anatar?
Anatar.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
But I like the kick-ass heroine idea.
Yeah.
I think people will really love to hear about that. Well, when you do come up with a book and it's published, I do want to talk to you about it. Okay. It would be fantastic. I wish you all the best with that and all else that's in the future for you, Ryshia. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.